Thank you, Selamat Petang and Anak Bangsa Malaysia. You are the chairman? This must be an illegal organization. Thank you, Haris and friends, for inviting me here. Haris told me that I have to give a talk, sort of a lecture, about this question of whether do we need a third force. That's his title, not mine. And he explained to me briefly about why this topic was chosen. As I understand, the background to this is the state of our country today. It requires active participation of the rakyat. It's like political parties may not be adequate to address some of these issues. And so whether I think we need a third force, it depends on what voice we're going to come out. What are we going to say? I think that's more important, whether we need another group. It is true that, and I fully agree with him, that the political parties in this country have somewhat been less than candid, less than clear about very fundamental questions and issues that Rakyat wants to know. After 53 years of independence, we are still in that state. Some people say a denial state. Some people deliberately not wanting to explain to the Rakyat for obvious reasons, because these vested interests, these people wants to keep things as they are. Because no matter how terrible it is, there are some people who are comfortable with it. So another voice from the Rakyat about some of these fundamental questions are definitely needed. No question. Now, I just want to trace some of these issues, because the benefit of being a politician is this. I see the whole spectrum. Well, I think, as far as possible. I have been in Barisan. I have been there many years. I am now in the opposition. I'm also very friendly with what we call non-governmental organizations, such as yourself. And because I'm a full-time politician, I do go around and listen to people. Besides talking to them, I also have a reasonably good opportunity to understand some of the apprehensions, some of the issues. And what I've discovered is this. There is a great chasm, there's a great divide in this country, because people do not understand some of these key issues. This divide and rule, or this segmentation, or this differentiation that's going on, I think has resulted in this lack of understanding of some of the basic issues. And this is the challenge that we all facing today. We cannot talk of anything important and significant without someone will say, oh, that's not what it means, or this is not what it is. And until the Rakyat, or at least the majority of the Rakyat, can have that capacity to look at issues within a certain common framework, a certain understanding, we cannot have this unity. We cannot have this ability to address these issues. One of the problems we have today is the question of raised by people like Bukasa, for example, and Mahathir, and even Agmo to some extent. The issue of citizenship. I want to talk about this because this is key. I was in Johor 2 nights ago, and the crowd of about 300 mainly Malays, mainly educated. The question was, why is it that, this is from the floor, why is it that the non-Malays cannot accept our demands for the so-called privileges and preferences and special treatment and so on and so forth? Because we have considered many things. And of course, we go back to the Merdeka days, the issue of citizenship. My sense is that a lot of the Malays still, whether because of UMNO or because of our education system or because of indoctrination by BTN or whatever it is, a lot of Malays feel that in exchange for that citizenship, in exchange for that, we must have this economic parity. We must have that special treatment, special whatever, until parity, economic parity, is achieved. The people in Perkasa and such groups, they're not anti-Chinese in the way that the whites, for example, at some point in the history of this country world, had a feeling of superiority against the blacks. It's not that sort of superiority. It is the feeling amongst the Malays that, yes, we have given you this concession, this just so like citizenship, easy citizenship. In 1958, which is true, suddenly you have 850,000 non-Malay become citizens in 1 year. So we have given all that so quickly. So it is therefore incumbent, and they understood this 153 and all those other Article 89 and all that in the Constitution, and of course followed with the NEP and all that. They then therefore say, this goes to show that until we achieve some measure of parity, economic parity, we are entitled to this special treatment. Now, if we understand history, of course we will not fall into that argument so easily. But history is something we have forgotten for whatever reason. We don't teach history anymore, at least not in the way that I was brought up. You see, the issue of citizenship is a lot more complex after that. You see, if you go back to the days of the Strait settlements, and even as far as 1865, the issue of citizenship was managed in our country in different ways, in different sense. You see, the Strait settlement had a lot freer way of giving citizenship, like the Strait settlement states. And even the Federated Malay States had a different system. It's only the unfederated Malay states that had a more rigid management of that issue. So in other words, in the course of the 100 years before independence, we have got many ways of, depending on the time and depending on situations, depending on the requirements of the economy at that time. We were under British rule, must remember that. So therefore, there have been different approaches to the issue of citizenship. In some parts, some time in the history of our country, we were quite relaxed. In some parts, we are not. So I told them that whatever the history of this country, whatever the arrangements then promoted by the British and implemented by the British, we have to live with the situation now. And the situation now is that we are all citizens of this country. How then do we reconcile the rights of the citizens of this country, who are entitled to certain rights like everybody else?